You know that feeling when a super simple, everyday chore, like folding the laundry or just replying to a single email, suddenly feels like this massive, immovable mountain? You know you have to do it. You literally have the time to do it right now, but for some reason you just can't. If you've ever felt that way, I promise you, you are far from alone. Actually, this quote hits the nail on the head. It perfectly captures this agonizing internal paradox that so many of us face. It goes, I'm sitting here wanting to do the thing, knowing I need to do the thing, and I can't make myself do the thing. It's this literal feeling of being glued to your chair. Basically, it's a mental block where your brain essentially just shuts down before you can even begin. Well, what we're talking about here actually has a name. It's called ADHD paralysis, and it's defined as the complete inability to initiate tasks, despite having a conscious desire or need to actually complete them. It brings on physical immobility, time distortion, and just intense emotional panic. Look, it's real, it's totally neurological, and most importantly, it is absolutely not a personal failing. Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're going to fundamentally shift how we understand the ADHD brain by looking at exactly why ADHD differs from general dysfunction. Let's dive right in. Section 1, the intention-action gap. To really ground our explainer in the hard science, we have to look first at the prefrontal cortex. This is essentially the brain's management system, right? Think of it like the CEO's office. Executive dysfunction is a neurological breakdown happening in this exact region. It physically impairs the brain's ability to translate your intention into action. It's kind of like a highway with a collapsed bridge. The destination is plugged into the GPS, the car is running, you desperately want to go there, but the actual infrastructure connecting your intention to your motor skills, it's structurally compromised. Because of that, there's this devastating contrast between what it looks like on the outside versus the inside. Because this intention-action gap is invisible, it gets misunderstood all the time. From the outside looking in, a person frozen by executive dysfunction just looks disinterested, maybe careless or avoidant. But look at what's happening on the inside. The internal reality is pure panic, exhaustion, intense frustration, and immense self-blame. The person is completely aware that they're failing to start, they're watching themselves lose time, and feeling totally powerless to change it. Section 2, laziness versus executive dysfunction. Laziness and executive dysfunction are fundamentally different, and we can actually map this out across 8 distinct dimensions. Let's just look at a few of the big ones here. Take the desire to act. A lazy person generally has low desire, but someone with executive dysfunction, they have a really high desire, just an inability to begin. What about the emotional response? Laziness usually produces indifference, right? Executive dysfunction produces severe distress and shame. Then there's the response to stakes. Higher pressure might actually motivate a lazy person, but for someone dealing with executive dysfunction, raising the stakes often makes the paralysis so much worse. And physically speaking, laziness feels like relaxation. Executive dysfunction feels like agonizing physical tension. So yeah, they're absolutely not the same thing. Section 3, the dopamine activation deficit. Let's look under the hood. Every single task you do requires what we call activation energy. And the required fuel for that energy, that's dopamine. So here is the core issue. ADHD brains have a chronically low tonic baseline of dopamine. The brain's dopamine transporters basically clear the neurotransmitter away way too quickly. So your prefrontal cortex is essentially this incredibly powerful high-performance engine that is just chronically running on empty. When a task doesn't give you an immediate reward, the brain literally cannot generate the chemical spark it needs to engage the motor cortex. This is completely different from neurotypical brains, which are largely importance-based. They can generate that activation energy simply because a task matters or just through sheer willpower. But ADHD brains, they operate on an interest-based nervous system. They require entirely different triggers to generate dopamine. We're talking about interest, novelty, challenge, or extreme urgency. Just telling yourself, hey, I really need to do this, doesn't actually connect to action for an ADHD brain unless one of those 4 specific triggers is present. Section 4, the neural tug-of-war. Now, we all have 2 primary brain networks that dictate our focus. The first one is the task-positive network, or TPN. You can think of this as your brain's active focus mode. It kicks on when you're deeply engaged in focused, goal-directed work. The second is the default mode network, or DMN. This is essentially the brain's background processing mode. It activates during rest, mind-wandering, and self-reflection. It's your inner monologue, the daydreaming center, you know? Let's see how this all builds together. In a neurotypical brain, these two networks basically act like a seesaw. When you start a task, the TPN goes up and the DMN goes down, right? One is on, the other is off. But in an ADHD brain, it acts more like a glitchy switch. Functional MRI scans actually show that people with ADHD fail to adequately suppress the DMN during focus tasks, meaning both networks are co-active. They're literally muscling each other for control at the exact same time. So while you're trying to write an important email, your brain is simultaneously running loud background noise about, say, what you had for dinner yesterday. It is a very literal neural tug-of-war, and it is exhausting. Which brings us to Section 5, Scaffolding for the Brain. Let's talk solutions. When you find yourself completely frozen, you really need an emergency toolkit to bypass that stalled prefrontal cortex. Here are 4 science-backed steps you can try. First, the out loud 2-minute microstart. Commit to doing the thing for just 2 minutes and say it out loud. Literally narrating your action activates a completely different neural pathway. Second, reduce your options to exactly 2. This kills decision paralysis instantly. Third, use physical movement as a bridge. Do 10 jumping jacks, anything to prime your cognition. And fourth, externalize your tasks. Get them out of your working memory and onto a piece of paper immediately. Remember, your brain is for processing, not for storage. Another incredibly powerful tool is body doubling. This is simply working near someone else. Their calm, productive presence acts as an external anchor for you. Because the ADHD brain is highly prone to unconscious mirroring, having an extra body nearby actually helps regulate an overstimulated mind and quiets all that competing neural chatter. In a way, it essentially loans you their executive function environment. Pretty cool, right? So if you take away absolutely nothing else today, please remember this. You are not failing. Your prefrontal cortex is just underfueled. That invisible gap between your intention and your action is a measurable neurochemical reality. It is not a character flaw. So, here's my question to you to wrap this up. If willpower isn't the answer, if trying harder is a strategy that's just doomed to fail against a glitchy neural switch, how will you redesign your environment to actually support your brain? Because honestly, it's time to stop fighting your neurology and start accommodating it.